All right, we're here at the New York Comic Con with Jim Lee, founder of Wildstorm, and now executive art director for DC Universe Online.
Executive creative director.
Executive creative director. Okay, but it's not just you; it's pretty much the entire Wildstorm staff is helping you out on the art side, correct?
Well, actually, there's 5 other artists there. Actually, I think it's 5. It's J.J. Kirby, Carlos D'Anda, Oliver Nome, Livio Ramondelli, Michael Lopez, and Eddie Nunez. So it's actually 6. And we are the concept team for the game. And all those guys work in comics, and we all share studio space. But I sort of corralled them into this job, and basically we're doing all the concept art for the heroes and the buildings and environments and tanks, all that kind of stuff for the game. And all that stuff gets sent to Sony Online Entertainment in Austin, and then they work with the art we send them and build the 3D assets.
So, this game was announced a couple years ago, and they brought you out and here's Jim Lee. I didn't get to talk to you then, but so I'll ask you now, as a huge MMO fan as you are, how awesome was it to be able to be the guy that's putting the look of this MMO together?
It's very awesome. When I was lucky because I'm actually a VP at DC Comics, so I knew sort of internally that they were talking about doing an MMO based on the DC Universe. And so as soon as I caught wind of that, I put my hand up and said, look, I have to be involved in this project. I demand it, But they knew that I played a lot of MMOs, I played a lot of video games, and that I had a passion for this kind of thing. And obviously I worked in comics, so I was a logical person to sort of put in charge of this kind of project on the DC end of things. And yeah, it's been great. I mean, I thought I knew a lot about games, but obviously when you get into it, you really realize wow, there's a lot of stuff that goes into putting these types of games together, especially MMOs, because there's so much information, so many things you have to build. And it's been a real learning process for me over the past 3 years. But the people at Sony Online have been terrific, and very collaborative sort of process. And I've learned a lot working with them.
And the Wildstorm offices are on the West Coast, just like the Sony offices are. So the back and forth must be pretty easy since you don't have to really.
Yeah, it's ironic, but yeah, their headquarters is in San Diego, but the actual part of Sony Online that's producing the game is based in Austin. The only nice thing about it is that when they do a new build of the game, I can just drive 20 minutes to SOE in San Diego, sit down at the machine, log in to the server, and check out what the latest thing they've added to the game. But flying to Austin is pretty short. It's like a 3-hour flight, so I go out there every couple months, meet with the team, look at stuff they've been building, and just kind of give my feedback on a lot of different things. So yeah, they're really receptive to the feedback, and I think we've both learned a lot from working with each other.
Now, in designing the game, obviously you didn't design every one little last thing. You had all the help, and did you end up breaking it up in chunks? Was Carlos D'Anda in charge of a particular character?
Yeah, well, early on we realized certain guys had certain strengths. Carlos is a tremendous artist in general, but he is amazing in terms of drawing tech and robots and that kind of stuff. So he was doing some amazing. He was spitting out all these amazing tanks and barracks and buildings and stuff like that. So we really, put him in charge of that kind of thing, and he spearheaded that. And but I'm looking at everything and giving feedback on everything. But I'm not one to kind of get in the way and say oh, I didn't design that. I have to tinker with it to make it, on style. If I see something that's amazing, a lot of times I just say, you know what, that looks great. Let's put it in the game. The real trick from my end is to make sure that all these different things look like they can exist in the same game, that we don't have a lot of clashing styles because we have a lot of different people working on the game. But early on, I would do sketches for a lot of different things and say, hey, this is my style, and kind of verbalize how I thought about these things as I drew them, because it wasn't something I always did before. I mean, you just sort of instinctually draw what you want to draw, and the thinking goes lightning fast. But to slow it down and kind of explain, this is how my take on buildings, this is my take on costume design, this is my take on tanks. But that was really early on the process, and after they kind of got it, I let them run with it. And so a lot of the stuff that you're seeing is them extrapolating from my style, and it all still works because we're all kind of coming from the same sort of school of thought.
Now, your 2D art in the comics is very detailed. There's a lot of line work involved, and going to this where not necessarily all those details are going to make it in. Did you find it a little bit easier that you could pull back a little bit on how much you put into it, or was it more difficult for you to not this needs to be more detailed?
I wish there was a lot more rubble and smoke in the game so you can hide all the legs and stuff. But yeah, I mean, definitely some of the tricks that you would rely on in 2D art aren't going to exist in a 3D game. So everything has to be built three-dimensionally. You're not going to be able to cheat and make Batman's cape super long in one panel and short in the other because it suits your purposes, you know, as an artist. So you have to pinpoint what this is the length of his cape. Yeah, there's definitely things like that, but for the most part, there's some really cool things that you can do in the game that you can't do in 2D art, like movement and sound. And so it's been a real, I feel like I've found a treasure chest and just opening up and playing with all these new tools like sound and movement. It's been great and really liberating and added to my art, I guess. So there's a lot of cool stuff that we're doing in the game that couldn't do in 2D art.
Great. Now, you guys are pretty much designing the entire DC universe, and obviously you haven't drawn everybody for the game or even in your own career yet.
A lot of times I've drawn the characters for the first time doing the concept art in the game. Absolutely, yeah.
So without saying too much, because I know you guys aren't allowed to reveal a whole lot about character. Has anybody come up that you haven't gotten to design yet that you can't wait for them to say, we need a design for this guy?
No, I think we've pretty much hit all the major characters at this point. And there were characters that weren't on the list, and I said, I know that Lois Lane is going to be in the game. Let's just start concepting her now. But I would say all the major characters are in there, which is, now whether they make it out for launch, I don't know. But, I mean, all the major characters have been concepted and are probably going to be built, and it's refreshing to see that because most games really are very limited in terms of the number of superheroes or supervillains you're going to see in the game. And this game's got a lot of them already. And they did a lineup where you see all of them standing up. It looks pretty kick-ass. Yeah.
It's kind of like an in-scale kind of
they're actually standing in kind of formation. So some characters are more in the foreground and more others in the background. And they're all kind of in static poses. But it's just cool to see all of them. It's almost like you have a virtual toy collection, and you have all these characters that you've never seen three-dimensionally in sculpted form or toy form, and here they are in 3D form, and you can kind of move the camera around and look at them. It's pretty cool.
All right, well, It's great. I mean, we can't wait to see it all in action when it finally comes out, and thanks a lot for taking the time.